was the worst day of my life. Never had that feeling before. And I never want to feel like that again. Never thought this day would come.
The world remembers the flashbulbs, the stadium roars, and the tragic global panic of 2009. But inside a quiet, heavily guarded home in Calabasas, California, a mother sat alone with a grief too heavy for the cameras. Katherine Jackson, the 96-year-old matriarch of music's most chaotic dynasty, has spent decades shielding her family's deepest secrets. Yet, when the noise got too loud, she stepped into the light to tell the real story. What exactly happens when a mother is forced to eulogize her own king? The definitive timeline of Katherine's words. June 25, 2009, didn't just break the hearts of millions of music fans across the globe, it fundamentally shattered the foundational bedrock of the Jackson family. While the media circus immediately spun into overdrive outside Ronald Reagan UCLA Medical Center, speculating on everything from propofol dosages to emergency calls, Katherine Jackson did what she had always done best. She retreated into the quiet sanctuary of her faith and her family, wrapping her arms around Michael's 3 suddenly orphaned children. When Katherine finally chose to step in front of the cameras, she didn't do it for fame, clout, or a paycheck. She did it out of a fierce, maternal necessity to reclaim her son's narrative from the headlines that threatened to swallow his memory whole. Her first major, definitive moment of breaking the silence came in November 2010 during a highly anticipated, deeply intimate sit-down interview with Oprah Winfrey at the Jackson family compound in Encino. Sitting in her garden, wearing her signature elegant, grandmotherly attire, Katherine let the world see the raw, unedited grief of a mother who had outlived her child. She didn't hold back when Oprah asked about the day Michael died, describing the sheer terror of receiving the phone call from her son's assistant, rushing to the hospital, and being met with the devastating news. During that groundbreaking conversation, Katherine spoke candidly about Michael's relationship with plastic surgery and prescription medication, admitting that she had long worried about his health. She recalled telling him directly that she didn't want to hear one day that he had overdosed, a conversation that haunted her in the wake of his passing. Yet, alongside the pain, she painted a picture of Michael that the public rarely saw. A fiercely loving, hands-on father who would disguise his children in masks just so they could experience a sliver of a normal childhood. It was a masterclass in maternal defense, showing that beneath the global icon was just a boy who loved his mom. The silence was broken again, even more formally, in 2012 when Katherine sat down with legendary journalist Piers Morgan. In this interview, the tone shifted from pure grief to a demand for justice. Katherine open-heartedly detailed the immense, crushing pressure Michael was under just weeks before his death as he prepared for the grueling 50-night This Is It residency at London's O2 Arena. She expressed deep skepticism about how a 50-year-old man, physically exhausted and emotionally drained, was expected to pull off such a monumental feat. She spoke of his insomnia, his frantic late-night phone calls, and the sinking feeling that his handlers were pushing him far past his physical limits. But Katherine's most impactful and definitive statements didn't happen on a television set. They occurred under the sterile fluorescent lights of a Los Angeles courtroom. In 2013, Katherine took the witness stand in her high-stakes, multi-billion-dollar wrongful death lawsuit against concert promoter AEG Live. For days, the matriarch endured grueling cross-examinations, breaking her silence not for the cameras, but for the public record. On the stand, she fought back tears as she blamed the promoters for ignoring Michael's rapidly deteriorating health in the pursuit of profit. "My son was sick," she testified firmly, her voice trembling but resolute. "They knew he was sick, and nobody said, 'Let's call a doctor, let's see what's wrong with him.'" This wasn't just an interview. It was a mother using the legal system to hold the entertainment industry accountable for the loss of her son. Beyond the courtroom and the major American networks, Katherine also extended her voice internationally, granting a rare, deeply personal feature to 60 Minutes Australia. In that special, she walked viewers through the emotional weight of raising Prince, Paris, and Blanket. She explained that she chose to step up as their legal guardian because she promised Michael she would always protect them, ensuring they knew exactly who their father was away from the stage. To ensure her words were preserved exactly as she intended, without network editing or journalistic spin, Katherine took matters into her own hands in late 2010 by releasing her private photojournal book, Never Can Say Goodbye, The Katherine Jackson Story. Across its pages, she broke her silence through written word, sharing never-before-seen family photographs and intimate essays. She wrote about Michael's legendary generosity, his quiet moments of creative genius, and the profound void left in the Encino home. But the public defense of her son was only a symptom of a much deeper, private pact, one forged in the quiet spaces where Michael wasn't a king, but simply a son seeking refuge. The mother, the king, and the household dynasty. Long before Michael Jackson was the king of pop, he was just a skinny, hyperactive little boy hiding behind his mother's long skirts in Gary, Indiana. To understand the profound bond between Katherine and Michael, you have to look at the family dynamic inside that tiny two-bedroom house on Jackson Street. The household was a pressure cooker of ambition, strictly governed by the iron fist of the family patriarch, Joe Jackson. Joe saw his children as a ticket out of poverty, running their rehearsals like a military boot camp. Mistakes weren't tolerated, and the discipline was notoriously harsh. In that high-stress environment, Katherine became the ultimate sanctuary. While Joe represented fear and perfectionism, Katherine represented unconditional love, safety, and a quiet, unshakable faith. Michael's relationship with his mother wasn't just close. It was arguably the most significant relationship of his entire life. He openly admitted that she was his anchor, the one person in the world whose approval he craved above all else. Even as a global superstar living at Neverland Ranch, Michael would call Katherine constantly, sometimes just to hear her voice or ask for her advice. He inherited her gentle speaking tone, her deep sensitivity, and her devotion to philanthropy. When Michael began to radically change his appearance through plastic surgery, many insiders noted that the facial features he was trying to emulate, the high cheekbones and soft nose structure, closely mirrored those of his mother. He wanted to see her face when he looked in the mirror. But managing the chaotic, explosive energy of the Jackson family dynasty was no easy feat for Katherine. She wasn't just Michael's mother, she was the matriarch to 9 fiercely competitive, highly talented siblings. The success of the Jackson 5 changed the family hierarchy forever, thrusting preteens into adulthood and turning siblings into business rivals. As Michael's star eclipsed everyone else's, the internal friction grew. Siblings like Jermaine, LaToya, and Janet had to navigate the massive shadow cast by their brother. Katherine found herself constantly playing the role of the ultimate peacekeeper, trying to maintain a normal family fabric while dealing with massive egos, betrayal, and the relentless intrusion of the global media. When LaToya released a controversial tell-all book in the early 1990s, or when Jermaine recorded a diss track aimed at Michael's changing personality, it was Katherine who stepped in to heal the rifts. She refused to let the music industry tear her children apart. She made sure that despite the stadium tours, the millions of dollars, and the global fame, the siblings remembered where they came from. She kept the family grounded by enforcing traditional values, ensuring that when they gathered for holidays or family dinners, the platinum records were left at the door. Yet the sheer scale of Michael's fame created an undeniable distance between him and the rest of the clan. He became an institution, surrounded by managers, lawyers, and handlers who guarded him like a corporate asset. His siblings often complained that they couldn't even get a phone call through to him without going through a gauntlet of security. But Katherine always had a direct line. She was the only person who could walk past the security guards, past the managers, and straight into Michael's private quarters to tell him the hard truths he didn't want to hear. She watched him transition from a joyful, dancing child into a lonely king, isolated in a castle of his own making, a tragic transformation that weighed heavily on her heart. She did everything in her power to shield him from the world's sharpest edges, but no mother, no matter how strong, could protect her son from the inevitable storm that was brewing. Can a family empire truly survive when its brightest star is suddenly extinguished? The day the music stopped, June 25, 2009, wasn't just a breaking news story. It was a profound global psychological event. When the news hit that Michael Jackson had died, the sheer volume of frantic internet searches literally crashed Google, crippled Twitter, and took down Wikipedia. It felt as if the Earth's rotational axis had momentarily stuttered. But while the entire globe was busy mourning the loss of a musical deity, the Jackson family was drowning in the surreal, suffocating reality of losing a son, a brother, and a father. The structural collapse of the family unit was immediate, massive, and painfully public. The glue that had somehow held this sprawling, complicated dynasty together for decades had suddenly vanished, leaving behind a massive void and an unbelievably complex estate. In the eye of this unprecedented hurricane stood Katherine. At an age when most people are quietly enjoying their twilight years, she was thrust back into the trenches of active motherhood and high-stakes legal warfare. Michael's will was crystal clear about one thing. If anything happened to him, he wanted his mother to raise Prince, Paris, and Blanket. And so Katherine, then just weeks away from her 80th birthday, absorbed the crushing grief of burying her child and immediately pivoted to protecting his children. She brought them into her home in Calabasas, pulling them out from behind the veils and masks they had worn their entire lives, and carefully transitioned them into the real world. She became their rock, fiercely guarding their privacy, while giving them the most normal teenage years possible under the circumstances. It was an act of profound, selfless endurance. But outside the walls of that Calabasas mansion, the fallout was tearing the rest of the Jackson family apart. The aftermath of Michael's passing unleashed a tidal wave of tension among the siblings. The reality of his multi-million-dollar debts instantly morphing into a billion-dollar posthumous empire created a bizarre, high-pressure environment. There were leaked letters, public disputes over the executors of the estate, and that infamous, chaotic driveway altercation in 2012 that played out in front of the paparazzi. Through it all, Katherine was caught in the middle. She was the focal point of everyone's anxiety, the matriarch trying to referee her grieving, frustrated, and deeply traumatized children, while simultaneously managing the legal labyrinth of Michael's massive artistic catalog. The trauma of his sudden exit magnified every existing crack in the family foundation. Beyond the family compound, the cultural earthquake triggered by his death fundamentally rewired the entertainment industry. Michael's tragic end became a grim, sobering cautionary tale about the toxic intersection of mega fame, isolation, and the medical enablers who cater to the elite. The world was suddenly forced to reckon with the human cost of creating a pop icon. His death sparked sweeping conversations about the brutal physical toll of touring, the ethics of prescription pills management in Hollywood, and the devastating isolation that comes with being the most famous man on the planet. The industry lost its ultimate showman, but in the process, it gained a stark, terrifying mirror reflecting its own worst habits, forcing executives to rethink how they manage generational talents before they burn out completely. Yet, from a purely artistic standpoint, Michael's legacy only metastasized. His catalog surged in value, his posthumous releases shattered records, and the massive Cirque du Soleil tributes sold out globally. He achieved in death the financial invincibility he had been desperately chasing in the final years of his life. But for Katherine, those billions of dollars and shattered records were cold comfort. She would trade every single platinum plaque, every sold-out arena, and every cent of that posthumous empire just to have her son sitting next to her at the kitchen table one more time, safely far away from the flashbulbs. Today, as Katherine Jackson celebrates her 96th birthday in 2026, the noise has finally started to settle. The lawsuits are largely history, the siblings have found their own paths, and Prince, Paris, and Blanket are fully grown adults carving out their own distinct identities. Katherine's job as the ultimate protector, the peacekeeper, and the guardian of the throne is essentially complete. She rarely speaks to the media now, having said everything she ever needed to say in those vital years following 2009. She has earned her quiet. Her silence today is not a sign of hiding. It is the ultimate testament to a mother who fought the world for her son and finally won. Hit that subscribe button for more episodes in this channel.